Our next question comes from Oliver Damien.
Thanks to Australian skateboarder Oliver Perkovic's non-profit Skatistan, skateboarding is now the #1 sport for girls in Afghanistan. It also has the highest proportion of female skateboarders in the world, simply because of a loophole in the Quran, which, unlike other sports, does not specifically prohibit skateboarding for women, maybe because it's so new. Could this be a less confrontational way to diffuse radical Islam, by looking for loopholes where inroads to moderation can be made?
I'll start with Christina on that, who spent some time in Afghanistan.
So I visited the Skatistan project, which is fascinating, and I mean it's wonderful to see these kids who have had nothing but war for so many years and have no toys. I mean, Afghan kids just don't have anything in their houses. To have the freedom of riding on a skateboard. I'd be surprised if it's the #1 sport among Afghan girls, actually. I've only seen it in Kabul, but...
they're forbidden to ride bicycles as they are in Saudi Arabia, so if you want to get around on something with wheels, that's your only choice.
But there is an Afghan, I have to correct you, sorry Tony, but there's an Afghan women's cycling team who are amazing, so there is
Okay, we'll slap our researchers on the wrist.
I must say with the skateboarding, I mean, it's great, and a lot of it is for street children in Kabul. And I went to see the project in 2009 when I was very depressed about what was going on in Afghanistan, and I thought, I want to write something more uplifting and positive. And one of the problems in Afghanistan is the ethnic differences, and particularly between the Pashtuns and the Tajiks. So I was told that in this project they have all sorts of people from different tribes and they all play together. When I went to see them, the Pashtuns were fighting the Tajiks and hitting each other with the skateboards. So it didn't work quite as I had imagined. I mean, this is a culture where people love fighting and they fight with everything, even with the kites, have broken glass on the strings to cut down. And they fight with boiled eggs as well. So it's sort of, I mean, it's play as well as fighting. But so I didn't maybe see the best of that project, but I know
it doesn't sound like it. I have to admit. So just briefly on the broader question of women in Afghanistan and, if you like, in Pakistan as well, since you wrote the book about Malala, or with Malala, can you just give us briefly, if you can, your sense of what will happen, for example, when the West pulls out completely out of Afghanistan, and will that flow further into Pakistan?
I feel really strongly about this because, as you probably remember, after 9/11, one of the big issues about going and taking on, removing the Taliban regime was the treatment of women, and all these promises were made by President Bush and Tony Blair and others about how women would be free in Afghanistan and they would have a new life. Now, things have certainly improved for some women in Afghanistan, and there's a lot more girls at school. There's about 2 million girls at school, whereas back in the time of 9/11, there were very few, in fact, none officially, but lots at secret schools. What I fear is, though, I mean, the situation, it's still really one of the worst places in the world to be a woman, to be honest. You probably saw that case recently, Farkhunda, the 27-year-old trainee teacher who was burnt to death in Kabul. She was set fire to, she was driven over by a Toyota pickup, and then she was thrown in the Kabul River. And afterwards, people then came out and protested at what had happened, and these very brave Afghan women held her coffin. We're going back to the funeral and death theme, but and that was unheard of in Afghanistan, for women to come and hold a coffin at a funeral. So a lot of people took a positive thing from that and said this shows that things are changing. But I have to say, the fact that a 27-year-old woman can be brutally killed by a mob in the middle of Kabul, in the middle of the day, a mile from the presidential palace.
What caused it to happen,
also
briefly?
Shows, you know, how bad things are. Well, there were all these men outside. This was by a shrine, and they were selling fake amulets. And she was very religious and said to them, you shouldn't be fooling people with these fake things. So one of them shouted out to people, this woman is setting fire to Qurans. And so they, I mean, ironically, she'd been trying to uphold religion, and they then all attacked her. And the people that attacked her, if you look at the footage, which unfortunately you can see, were not sort of like long-bearded Taliban types in villages. They were young urban people in Kabul who then took, filmed it on their mobile phones, put it on Facebook or YouTube, as if they were proud of it. And you could also see on this footage that a lot of people were standing by. And it's horrible footage. You see her trying to stand up and pleading for her life, and then them carrying on. So, you know, this shows how far things still have to go for women. And it worries me that as the international community sort of draws away from Afghanistan, that these women that we all made lots of promises to are not protected. And some of the women that we used as sort of models and had at international conferences around the world and encouraged to speak out are now living in fear of their lives and are in hiding.